All right. So today we are doing our live coding event. Do we have any official slides for today?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
think we get,
Cool.
at this point, are we just passing it to Tracy or to Chris?
Yeah, Tracy's going to share. I can do the intro.
Sweet.
Sounds
Nice.
good.
Can you see?
Yeah,
Okay, great.
it works. All right, well, welcome everybody. As Reinhardt asked earlier, like this is obviously the not the middle Wednesday of the month, but as we were mentioning at the beginning, we're going to try and I think by May we'll probably be back to the middle of the month again, and so you'll see that coming up soon. But yeah, today's going to be a lot of fun with Jack doing a TypeScript demonstration. So here we are. For those of you who don't know us, Ben, you want to start?
Hello, everybody. So my name is Ben, Senior Developer Experience Engineer at Netlify and on the Vue core team. So
And your
glad to
slide's
be here.
correct. I'm impressed.
Yes, it's correct. Finally.
I duped the right one. Yes.
he
On to you,
moved
Tracy.
to Netlify. He moved to Netlify, and then the slides never got changed for like 2 or 3 months. So,
Yep.
So I'm Tracy Olinka, and I'm at Bloomberg Industry Group.
And I'm Christian Guerreri, and I'm a team lead at Politico. Jack.
I'm Jack Koppa, and I struggle to tab through to get to the correct Zoom window. And I'm at Politico.
It's Jack.
Wunderbar.
So yeah, I looked at the latest updates, and we are up to 1,030. That's like awesome. It's still amazing to me how many people are a part of this group.
We're never going below 1,000. No one
Never
unsubscribes.
Yeah.
Oh, don't say that, Jack. They're all going to just be unsubscribing.
And as I mentioned, mostly the third Wednesday, the second. That's the second Wednesday usually. But anyway, you guys get the point. The middle Wednesday is what I usually try to say.
Middle Wednesday.
The middle Wednesday is what we're striving for. All right, next one. So for those of you who maybe don't know, we have a website, Vue.dc.io, which is going to have all these links on it, including the Discord channel, which is where the majority of people are having conversations, and it's a great place to be because if anyone's using some of the other Discord channels related to the Vue, you'll notice there's tons and tons of people in them. This gives you an opportunity to have some direct communication with people like Ben, who is a core Vue developer, and it's a great place to just come and talk about Vue and some of the problems, challenges, and successes that you've had. And obviously our meetup page, otherwise you probably didn't make it here. You probably already know about that, but definitely check out Twitter, and all of our meetups are recorded and end up on YouTube. So upcoming events, right now, going on right now is JS World. It's been all week. I've actually not been able to attend it too much. I've been pretty busy. But you definitely want to tune in for Friday when Vue.js Amsterdam takes place. Ben, what's happening on Saturday? I noticed it's 26 to 27.
I think it's like some of the people in Asia will be giving talks like late in the morning, basically.
And so it ends up being like Saturday, technically.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't imagine it's super late. Like I think 2 a.m. is some of the talks. So
got it. So all day Friday, basically, yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. I think all the normal speakers, all the usual speakers are there, and including new ones. And I think it's going to be pretty awesome to tune into that. So next Wednesday, March 24th, 2021, we're going to be doing a talk on accessibility with Vue at Politico. We have some people at Politico that are going to be coming to talk about that. And I think it's the first time we've done an accessibility talk here. I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be awesome. Definitely tell people about it. If you know nothing about accessibility, you're really going to enjoy this. And even if you are doing accessibility, I think you're still going to enjoy it. Like we've been doing some pretty advanced things at Politico with accessibility. It's been very important lately, over the past year, really. So yeah, looking forward to that. And then, April 14th, VueConf 2021 is going to happen. It's all online. It's all free. All three of these events are free. So definitely go check them out. And as always, we're looking for talks. You can sign up at vuedc.io/speaking, or just send us an email at vuejsdc@gmail.com. And even if you have just 15 minutes of things that you want to show off, or some challenges and successes that you've had with Vue, reach out to us. Like we want to give you a platform to talk. Do we have a raffle today, Ben?
We do have JetBrains licenses if people are interested. So I guess send us a chat to, if you go to 2 and then you can select panelists, send it off if you're interested in a JetBrains license. And if there's enough people interested, then we'll do the raffle. Otherwise, you're just going to get a free license.
Awesome. So it is trivia time. I think Tracy's doing trivia today.
The winner is
so close.
Oh, be my
Nice.
username. Woohoo!
A classic.
I'm gonna take a screenshot.
Oh yeah. I missed.
Well done.
Nice.
Hello, everyone. Today we are looking at TypeScript in Vue 3 specifically. What we're going to be doing is taking a repository that we very conveniently have worked on together previously. At least Brian had joined us for that. I imagine some other people who are here as well. And we're going to take that repository, which is Vue 3, and we're going to add TypeScript to it and start to see like which types of things we should pay attention to while we're doing that. A couple of caveats at the beginning. One is that we have someone on the call who has helped write the documentation and run workshops and talks about TypeScript in Vue, and that person is not leading this. Instead, you're stuck with me, who's going to who's used TypeScript in Vue 3 and obviously enjoys TypeScript a ton in Vue 2, but will likely run into hurdles along the way. And so full caveat here, it's live coding, everyone's favorite thing. But the best news is as soon as I get stuck, I'm just going to do a sign like this or something like that, and Ben will just take over and tell us how to fix this.
But I seem to remember you did a talk about this at last Vue conference.
So I can, yes, I can cover the topics as it relates to Vue in general fairly well, hopefully. And then the things that stick out to us as we're doing Vue 3 work, Ben will hopefully chime in. So to get started, if you're interested, let's go to, so you're welcome to follow along if you want, if that's preferable for how you would, for your learning style, but you definitely don't have to. You're equally welcome to grab the link for future reference, and then maybe come back to it if you want to experiment yourself. So let me do the everyone. Here we are. So this is what we had worked on last time. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the GitHub CLI, and let's clone it. Oops. And I'm going to use the GitHub CLI for no reason at all, just because they set that as the default. And let's open it up. So here we are. I need to hide some Zoom things. One moment. Okay, close chat. And I'm going to minimize all of your lovely faces. Cool. So our repository looks like this right now. It's got some components. They are Hello World components. You'll recognize this was the default component, but we had this people list that we had created last time. Tracy, if you want to plug our recordings, I think we have that one recorded and maybe up on YouTube. And what we had done is we created, we were just working through like, what is a Vue 3 app? We started from scratch with a Vue CLI app, initialized with kind of the standard JavaScript options. So, Vue CLI like this, we did a Vue create, or we might have done a, more likely we did a Vue UI, if you've seen this before, which is just the Vue CLI UI, if you will. And so we went through and we created a blank project. We ended up with something that looks kind of like this. And then I had documented kind of what we were hoping to do. We created some quote unquote requirements, and it's been a while since I've run this. So let's find out if it still works. We're just going to install dependencies here and get it started. But then for the rest of the meetup today, so long as this actually runs and works, and let's hope code is idempotent and all those fun things. So long as it's up and running, then what we're going to do is we're going to take our JavaScript components and our JavaScript code and this JavaScript repository, and we're going to add TypeScript to it first and then start modifying the components and then see what benefits that gets us. And something I'm excited to highlight is the stuff in Vue 3 that would have been more annoying or very annoying in Vue 2 that's significantly simplified, or at least the consistency of the TypeScript behaviors are improved just by virtue of being in a Vue 3 project. So that's what we're going to do. And then I anticipate, well, I shouldn't even say this because I imagine we'll run into lots of unexpected hurdles, as is wont to happen with live coding things. But if we get through and we've converted some existing code, then we may either try to add add another feature and do that in TypeScript, add another component, or we may not stick to this requirements idea. We may just experiment with what's another component that we could add. We'll obviously want to show at least a little bit of how the composition API behaves with TypeScript. So let's see what happens when we run serve. I think this is where we'll confirm that Brian was here with us last time, because I believe he's in our dummy data. All right, so yep, Brian and Brad. I don't think Brad's with us tonight. But what we were working on was a randomizer that would allow us to see some fun animations, but also what meetups often do is, like, you want to be able to randomize and then say someone has won, and then obviously pull them out of the available contestants so that you can run it again with just the people who are remaining. So let's see if this works. Animations are looking good. Fun Vue transitions. Hey, Tracy wins. And Tracy gets pulled out. Perfect. We never finalized the slide up animation there. But for the most part, that's exactly what we were hoping would happen. So in terms of features for this application, we're looking okay. But let's say it's an application that we know is about to, either it's already very large, obviously, just pretend it's already very large. It's obviously not. Or we know it's about to get larger. And I would argue that's when you might want to start thinking about, could TypeScript be a good fit for this project? Because maybe you start to have a lot of different places that are using similar data shapes, and you feel yourself. A good sign that maybe it's time to consider TypeScript in a project is you feel yourself often thinking like, I know this prop is an object, but I can't remember what properties are on that object. And so every time I'm trying to access something in my in my child component that's like 4 ways down, 4 components down the tree, and I'm trying to access a property, I have to click up to 3 components, try to figure out what the properties are, or my components are accessing, it's accessing this data shape from the API a lot, and I'm trying to remember what it looks like, and I often find myself having to reference other places to see what the shape of the data is, or I'm changing something in one component and I never expected that it was going to break something else because they happen to be both referencing the same properties, but it's really tough to know that because they're spread out over a large project. All of those types of things are when you might consider doing what we're about to do, which is work on adding TypeScript to that project. I'm going to pause for just a moment here. And okay, cool. So just links in the chat. For Chris or Ben or Tracy, please feel free to interrupt me. Yes. Oh, exactly. Thank you, Chris. Anyone at any time?
I told them.
Thank you. No, that's perfect. Anyone at any time, just say things, because I would love the opportunity to stop talking and try to answer questions, or more likely pass questions to Ben. And similarly, Tracy, Ben, Chris, please interrupt me at any time. What we're going to do right now is so this is a Vue CLI project. Vue CLI, various plugins. But you'll notice that if I search in here, in my package.json, I see no TypeScript dependencies. Let me zoom in once. And so how are we going to approach that? A question for Ben. So we're going to continue doing this in Vue CLI. If someone had decided that they had wanted to use, oh man, Vite, right? Is that something in the Vite case that you would also be adding or consciously choosing?
Yeah, I think you add it.
Jack. I was going to say, Jack, what you want to do, I would say go ahead and create a brand new Vite app. And then I think you'll find what you're looking for in there. And we can move the stuff from here over to that side so people can see the coolness of Vite.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to do that now? I was going to do the Vue add TypeScript thing here.
Yep. Yes. But if you want to use Vite and TypeScript, it's very easy to do.
Okay. Let's start
I have a quick question. Can I have a question?
Yeah.
Okay. This is actually about Vite. Does it do SSR? Because if I recall, you said that right now it doesn't do SSR.
I can't remember.
Sorry, what was that question?
SSR. Vite doesn't do SSR yet, right?
I think it actually already starting to. Like VitePress is an initial, basically prototype of that, and a lot of people are basically working on that. So the Vite community is very active on that end. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on that end.
Okay, thanks.
Sweet. Let's just try that. So here's Vue CLI TypeScript support. Well, sorry, this is the Vue 3 docs, the TypeScript support portion. And here's the Vue CLI definition for how you go about creating a project. We've already done that. So I haven't tried this on a Vue 3 project yet, but I'm going to give it a shot. So we're using the Vue CLI tool here, and we're just going to say add and TypeScript. See if it yells at us. One thing I didn't confirm and probably should have is whether or not I'm on the latest version of Vue CLI. I just have it installed globally. I think I am, or close to the latest. So fingers crossed. Okay, I'll also pause here for Ben to give input. But this is great that we get prompted for this. Would you like to use the class style component syntax? Let's see if this shows up. I don't know if class style. I don't know if class style shows up in here. For our case, and for what I'm going to do here, because it's my preference. At Politico, we don't use the class style syntax. We've found that in general, things work well enough with using like the options API, essentially like a the options API style of defining components, and the composition API makes that particularly easy. So I'm going to go ahead and say no. I'm not going to use class style component syntax. Do I want to use Babel alongside TypeScript? Sure. And I'm going to see what this does. I think I may only have the one router.
Yeah, this totally works. You should totally do it.
All right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And allow JS files to be compiled. Ooh, default to no. Interesting. I wonder why that is. I don't have a desire to have any JavaScript files. I'm pretty early on in the project, so I'll go ahead and say no. Skip type checking of all declaration files. This is funny. I don't know. Sure. I'm going to stick with the defaults here, but we can come back here. I was just looking at the prompts there of what the defaults were. Certainly, the thing I feel relatively strongly about here is that we wouldn't use the class syntax. Personal preference, I suppose. All right, some things happened. Let's take a look at what those things were. I would expect some package.json updates because we've installed some new dependencies here. Yep. So, the ESLint plugin, that's great news. The ESLint parser, love that. But here's our plugin. So that's specific to Vue and TypeScript. Here is our nice ESLint config for TypeScript, because obviously there are some things in ESLint that, TypeScript is at least a slightly different language in order to lint those things. And of course, a TypeScript dependency. That's excellent. Cool, love that for extending an ESLint config here. And a parser, nice. Okay, that all looks roughly good. We've got some other stuff going on here. We've got a tsconfig file that's new in order to allow TypeScript to do its compiling. Likely the defaults here are going to be pretty solid for us, but we have control over that now. And then it looks like we've renamed some files. That's very good. Added these shims. Yeah, so this is at least a little bit specific to Vue 3 of what this shim is. This define component, for example, is a Vue 3 approach to defining what the types are of a .vue file. So this file is basically just to say, like, is just to say when TypeScript, when you see a .vue file, which obviously, it's not a standard file naming the way like a .js or a .ts file is. Here's how you should treat it. You should treat it as this define component thing. Helps for compilation, and it's going to help us while we're editing in VS Code to start getting some of the benefits of having TypeScript in this project. Hello world. Ooh, fun. That's an impressive little thing that the Vue CLI is able to do, which is update some of our dependencies to point out that it's using TypeScript. And then down here, yep, this is great. Oh, awesome. This is exactly what we would hope for, which is that it's added a lang equals ts for us, and then it has added this define component approach. I'm going to come back to this before we make any new changes. I'm going to come back to what this allows, and hopefully we're going to be able to experiment a little bit with showing the before and after of using define component, but this is great. Index router is now a TS file, great news, and looks like this is lang equals TS as well. So this is good. This is good that we caught this. So our home file, we used the same file that name that came with an initialized, like your standard Vue CLI application. There's obviously limitations to what the Vue CLI and its plugin architecture can do with like auto updating things. It knows which files it might be interested in, but it doesn't know that, hey, this actually mattered a lot to me because this was, a not insignificant portion of my application. So I'm going to want this stuff back. I can kind of see a little bit of what it was trying to do. It's trying to do things like this, like set lang equals ts and use define component. But I'm okay losing all of that for now for the benefit of getting my application back. So before I commit any of this, I am going to undo this particular change. So I'm going to come into home view. Yep, looks like everything's kind of gone. So let's get that stuff back. So I just pasted in what was previously the case. Here's all our dummy data that we were using. This looks good, looking good. You'll notice that it is not a TypeScript component. And so we'll get the joys of adding TypeScript in here. But that should be mostly good in terms of changes. We've looked through all the changes that were applied. And now still, before I commit anything, I want to see if this compiles. I am kind of doubting that it's going to compile just because I've been trained to expect the worst during conversions like this, but let's see what happens. And if it doesn't compile, we'll get some fun live debugging, which is even better than live coding. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is looking like it's great news for us. This is also looking like it's great news for us, and we have a console free of errors, which is wild. Great news. And it looks like randomized. Man, Tracy is on fire. I swear this is actually randomized. Well, math.random. Cool. So this is excellent. I'm about to commit this. There are a couple other things that I'm going to try out to see if those are working before I commit. But I would recommend, if you're going through this transition, you'll want to kind of set guideposts for yourself. Obviously, like if you're working in a bigger app here, this is not something where you're going to be like, add TypeScript, commit it, push it, like, all right, we're good to go. You'll want to do some testing. So I can show a little bit more of the testing that I'm interested in here, but I want to pause just in case. Anyone have any questions for what we've done so far?
Yeah, so you can basically have a mixture of TypeScript, non-TypeScript while you're making the transition.
Yeah, definitely. I am surprised by that prompt on the Vue CLI of like, do you want .js files to be able to be compiled? And it defaulted to no, and I just accepted the default there. We can spend some time looking more into that. But the thing that I know for sure is you can have a component that is not TypeScript for sure. And you should be able to have JavaScript files as well, which is very important for this type of thing. Granted, an approach to migrating to TypeScript is just rename everything to TypeScript files, see if anything breaks immediately. And then there's this fancy thing. I wonder if it shows up in I don't think it does. There is something called no implicit any, which is a toggle that you might find yourself turning on and off. Because as you're transitioning to TypeScript, a lot of your files will be close to a lot of your JavaScript files, you just press rename to TypeScript. They're close to fully valid TypeScript already because TypeScript can infer so many things about your files. But there are some things like this no implicit any, which is basically talking about like TypeScript can't infer something, that your file's written in a way that it doesn't know the type of something. And so that file you can think of as like not fully type safe. In a final project, it's nice to have this set to true because that means you've got a lot of type safety in your project. TypeScript basically knows the types of everything throughout, but you can always start with this as false and say try re-enabling this soon kind of thing. That's something we can talk more about. But yes, when you're transitioning over a mix of TypeScript and JavaScript, totally fine, totally cool.
So we do TypeScript for our APIs now. Like we started that not too long ago. It's like for the Node, the Node APIs, we do TypeScript. Nice. We've pretty much gone over to JavaScript from like Golang or Python or whatever. A couple things we have to do Python because of the math, but other than that, so we've talked. Do we want to do it for the front end code? Does it make sense? And
sure. Yeah. I think that part of the talk I had given close to a year ago now, while we were all busy spreading COVID in Austin, that definitely still holds, which is like there are things to think about when you're considering whether TypeScript might be a good fit. The slight onboarding hurdle, whether it might be a good fit for your applications, and if they're big enough, if they have enough complex data structures that you find yourself struggling to keep track of, if enough people are working on the team, all of those things are factors in that decision.
So do you have any experience with TypeScript and Apollo? Not that there would be a problem with an Apollo client. Not that there would be a problem. I'm just wondering if you've actually done that.
Yeah, no, I have not. I actually know nothing about their TypeScript support. So we should look into that. Yeah, that's a very good question. Let's call our branch feature add TS live. Okay, so I'm gonna say let's call it a feature. Run. Let me expand this a little. Run Vue add TypeScript and verify, including reverting Vue CLI forced updates to home.vue. Okay, I'm going to push that up to a branch. Perfect. Okay, so the other thing I mentioned, there was one more thing that I wanted to check. Like I mentioned, I want to kind of do this step by step so that if something breaks later, I can always go back and I was like, well, I knew it was working then. Obviously, the way we do development. I want to run lint and find out what happens. because linting involves some other TypeScript specific things in order for ESLint to work. That was a bit of a pain point for us back. Now it's almost 2 years ago. More than 2 years ago. More than 2 years ago. But it looks like that's not as much of a pain point right now, which is awesome. Really, the whole subtext of this presentation is just me being pleasantly surprised. And let's find out if it's able to autofix issues. So obviously that's not the formatting that we would love. And it looks like I'm getting some warnings, which is fantastic. And I'm going to try to run lint and see if that autofixes. Oh, just the best. All right. So we are in a great place, which is very exciting. Please interrupt me if you have any questions. The next thing, I'm gonna look at two things next. One, I'm gonna take Hello World, where they added, where the Vue CLI plugin added TypeScript there, and we're gonna try to show kind of the before after here of what this allows a little bit. And then we have at least 2 components now, I think, maybe 3. Oh, app.vue is so simple. That's great. 2 important ones that we're going to add TypeScript to and kind of work through the problems, or hopefully the not problems, because so far I just keep being pleasantly surprised. This is what hello world.vue looks like right now. And this is roughly what it looked like before. It looked roughly like this. So this is a sort of a standard, your standard Vue. It's your standard standard Vue component. It's a JavaScript component, and you're exporting a default thing, and it is an object, and it describes the component, right? Let me go ahead and I wonder if I can. Yeah, that's not going to work. Why would everyone say it together? Jack, why would that ever work? Let's just grab this. Let's delete this. And let's throw this down here. And let's comment that out. So we have our component here. It is a JavaScript component. It is exporting a default object. It's called hello world, and it accepts a prop, right? If I were to add some things to this, like, for example, I want a computed prop, and I want all caps message to be a computed prop. And in my JavaScript component, I'm going to do, I'm going to return, or I want this to be all caps, so I'm going to return this dot message. Great. And I'm going to do to uppercase. Cool. So the lovely thing here is that Vue is, so even in this JavaScript component, it appears to be correctly inferring that message is something that's going to exist on this, and it's going to be a string. So it knows what properties are available there, which is awesome. I can see that this is optional, this message dot to uppercase. I'm going to come back to that because I think TypeScript would help us actually a little bit there. Yeah, cool. And I'm going to add one more, which is all caps message with prefix something. And I want to, in this case, return something like this, hi. And then I want to return my message. So let's do this dot all caps message. Perfect. So what's going on here? We're taking a look at all caps message, which is, it's computer prop. This is something we'd want to do in, we'd want to do in our applications. We have, we're trying to, what we're trying to display in the end somewhere in this template is all caps message with prefix, right? Why is all caps message showing as any? And for, as we get used to TypeScript here. Also, I should have, at the beginning, I probably should have spent a little more time clarifying what we were sort of going to assume about TypeScript knowledge, or at least not cover. I I'm not going to go super, I'm not going to give much of an overview of what TypeScript is at this point. However, Chris or Tracy or Ben, if you don't mind linking, we do have those types of talks previously. We have on our Vue.DC channel, we have an intro to TypeScript in Vue type of thing that covers all the basics of what is TypeScript and what does it do, and what types does it provide, what kind of things can it do. So please take a look at that. So I'm assuming at least a little bit there of background knowledge about what TypeScript is, and a little bit of background knowledge about what types of things it's good for. It's 100% okay if you've never heard of TypeScript, done TypeScript before. I think what we're talking about right now is still useful. You'll still see some of the benefits, but definitely recommend taking a look at some of those intro type pieces of content. But what I'm highlighting here is that Vue doesn't know the type of all caps message here. And the reason for that is that what Vue does, quote unquote, under the hood with this component object is a lot of Vue specific things to know at any given point in time, what is this, right? And we actually get some helpful information here. This is all very helpfully powered by TypeScript, even without us using TypeScript in this component. And so it knows this wonderful, ability to infer things. It knows that all caps message with prefix is going to be this thing that's a string, but it doesn't know what all caps message is. As you're doing development in Vue, you'll start to run into these things where it's like, I wish that my code would yell at me when I'm doing the wrong thing. Or I wish that VS Code and Vue, and when I compiled, I wish it knew more about my components. And a good example here is that all caps message, it's not telling us what the type of that thing is. And a lot of that can be traced back to, there's only so much that Vue can do while you're in these JavaScript components. Does that make sense? Kind of what I'm talking about there. Now's the time to say, Jack, that makes no sense at all. Please at least attempt to describe this in a way that makes sense. Sounds good. Probably mistakenly taking silence as understanding, or that we've bored everyone to death, and that's equally okay.
No, it's sounding good. I'm actually creating a playlist of TypeScript for our YouTube channel. So
perfect. Thanks, Tracy.
But it makes sense.
That's awesome. Okay, so this is when it was a JavaScript component, right? But what the Vue CLI did for us is it converted it to a TypeScript component. So let's start seeing what that looks like. It's as simple as doing lang equals ts here. So that tells us that the script block should now be interpreted as TypeScript. And we'll go ahead and we'll uncomment this. Perfect. So what is this defined component? Well, if you hover over it, VS Code gives us a lot of information. And can I? What is Shift P? It's like presenting. I wanted to show keystrokes, and I can't remember what I can't remember what the shortcut was. There's a thing in VS Code to present. I give up for now. But the shortcut that I find myself using a lot is F12, or you can just go to definition. So I in a repository or code base with TypeScript all the time, just F12ing into things. And this will take you to a TypeScript definition file. In this case, it's a Vue TypeScript definition file .d.ts. That just means like the definition for what something is in TypeScript. You don't have to worry about this, which is great because I don't understand this and I almost never have to. And that is a lovely, lovely thing. Every once in a while, though, I want to take the opportunity to share my favorite celebrity encounter if I can quickly find it. So I'm going to try TypeScript. And, oops, got unfocused there. TypeScript, GitHub, Vue, circular. and then I can't remember how to. Oh, yes. All right. Okay, this is just pure self-indulgence here. This is my favorite celebrity encounter. This is me saying that, yep, the TypeScript people broke something in Vue, and this is the creator of TypeScript and one of the creators of, the creator of C# replying, saying that they're going to fix it. It is my favorite.
Congratulations, Jack.
Thank you. This was my favorite. This was the height of my development, was Anders adding the label bug and replying and saying that it is indeed a regression. So anyway.
That's awesome.
Thanks. Anders and the TypeScript team and the people who have to define Vue, TypeScript definitions for what is a Vue component and how should it work. They are extremely smart and good at what they do, and they've put together this wonderful thing that we get to benefit from, which is basically, how do we describe what's going on in Vue when you set a computed property? Like when you set a computed property, what does that mean for other things in Vue that are going to access that computed property? And all that complexity is part of what goes into the reason that the composition API was worth. Oops, lost my headphones. 1 moment. All that is why the composition API was worth working on. It makes it easier to do these types of things, to infer types and understand types. So anyway, define components job is to take in component options that look exactly like you would define in a TypeScript or in a JavaScript component. And in fact, that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to uncomment this. Oops. I'm going to attempt to uncomment this. Command KU.
So how much easier would you say, because I know you at Politico, you used TypeScript before.
Yeah.
Before Vue 3. So how much easier would you say Vue 3 is with TypeScript as opposed to before?
The honest answer is I don't know yet, or at least I don't have enough data to give you a firm, like in production, in large scale code bases answer. I only know a little bit, which is we've done it on small projects. And setup, for example, which is the composition API method, when you're using that to define components and handle reusability and things like that, it's so much easier in that you can do things like share functionality and share state in a way that doesn't require mixins, doesn't require trying to extend components, and just works. There's a little bit of extra code like Ben talks about all the time, or plug, you can hear Ben talk about on Friday. So there's a little bit of extra code involved there, but definitely worth it in our experience with these smaller applications. The short answer, that wasn't even a short answer, but the slightly longer continued answer is that in order for us to really find out what this is like in our existing Vue 2 repos, we're going to need IE support, unfortunately, on our end for Vue 3. We're doing it, we're playing with it in smaller repos right now. Okay, so what I said I was going to do here is the define component just takes an options object that is exactly like you would do in a JavaScript component. So I'm literally, I'm copying this, copy, and I'm going to paste it here. And then it's yelling at us because we're exporting 2 different defaults. So I'm going to comment this out again. And there we are. Okay, so you'll notice, the red all of a sudden, actually. I should have just pointed that out. I'm going to test this. I don't know if this will actually work, but let's find out. Cool. If I remove this, does it stop yelling at me? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that's a like. Here's what TypeScript does. TypeScript yells at you, and it yells at you in big red underlines. So lang equals ts. It now is saying, hey Vue, and also Viter, and all the crazy amount of work that goes into making VS Code work well with Vue. Treat this as a TypeScript component, meaning start checking whether things are valid and yell at developers when they're not valid. In this case, I'm guessing what the error is going to say is only one default export allowed, something like that. Module cannot have multiple default exports. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Viter. And Viter's the one reporting it because Viter has to parse through our Vue component. So just adding this lang equals ts is when we start getting, when we're able to get yelled at, which is just the best thing. That was something that came up a lot, in our early TypeScript experience at Politico and emphasized that in a talk a lot last year, which is just you want to get yelled at as early as possible, especially when you're developing large, complicated applications and when you're developing with lots of developers. Okay, cool. So we now have our defined component, and we get things are mostly working as they were before. So we see that message. Ooh, message is type any. Interesting. We see that all caps message with prefix. It's correctly annotated. It's it's something that returns a string here. All caps message, though, that's any again. So this is a great demonstration of where by default, when you just convert a component to TypeScript, some things will immediately be better. You'll immediately get yelled at about like, hey, don't try to export two different default things, or simple things like that. Another thing where you can get yelled at is, let me say I'm just defining like my string equals that. What I can't do is what's a method that strings don't have? Push, probably. They don't have push, right? So it knows that my string is this thing. It knows that it's a string, and if I do my string.push because I thought that was an array, now I get yelled at, right? Push does not exist on. And so now you have your lang equals ts component, and importantly, I hope, I'm going to try pressing save here. And in addition to getting yelled at in my IDE, my hope is that I'll also get yelled at when I'm compiling the code. And that is the big benefit. This helps me while I'm developing. Well, hey, Jack, you just defined this as a string. Maybe you shouldn't try to do a push on it. That helps me at the time I'm writing it. But what about when someone's already written the code and now it's time for them to, someone's making new changes to it, and maybe they're pushing to your CI or CD pipeline, and you don't want code that's not going to work. You don't want that to ever make it. So I'm going to try pressing save here. And it looks like, so I can't tell, 716. So something about, I think this is behaving correctly. I don't think hello world is used in our application anymore. Might be what's going on here. And so the application is not watching it for changes because hello world isn't used. So there's actually a good chance that this will compile as well. If that's the case, I'll go ahead and import it. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to go ahead and import hello world real quick, just to tell the application like, hey, we actually want to use this thing. Yep. And let's go ahead and use it in our components. And finally, let's put it in here. All right. So now, hello world is now part of our application. It's being used. The Vue CLI knows it's going to be used because somewhere in the component tree of imports, it's getting called. What? Hold on, sorry. Oh, I don't know how that happened. Interesting. I guess when I was typing hello world, it auto-completed and imported for me, which is nice of them, but I had already imported it. Let's save again. Okay, now I'm very confused. Something, Oh, sorry. So it was when I was typing it in the template that it tried to auto-import it. That almost feels like a bug, I think. But, well, let's go ahead and save again. All right, there we are. That's what we were hoping to get to. Okay. So where are we here? Well, we've got some linting warnings that are yelling at us, so we could go ahead and run lint to fix those up. But this is what I'm really interested in, which is the TypeScript errors for our component at the time of compiling. So if I wrote this code over here, and I wrote this, and I had this terrible push, or someone wrote something that broke something, and then they committed it, and they pushed it to a PR, people approved it, it looked good to them. We know like this isn't going to work. We know that this method is going to fail in the browser. And so we never want this code to get to the browser. And so this is where TypeScript really helps us, which is that by having this as part of our compilation step, that means that as soon as you push this to your CI pipeline or like try to build it, it's not going to work and it will just fail. And so this code will never compile to be able to go to production. And so that means that you catch these types of errors before it ever gets to, basically before it ever gets to the source of truth for your code base. And it's certainly before this code ever gets to the browser. Does that part make sense? A quick, yes, no.
Yes, it does.
Thank you, Tracy.
But I'm looking forward to when you create data. I'm interested in that too.
Yeah,
okay.
Perfect.
I'm just saying.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it makes sense. I like that.
Yeah, that's a big thing for us. As usual, please flag any questions at any time so that I can stop boring you to death. Ooh, wait, there are some chats. I imagine. All right, those have just been. It's
just me sending videos out and stuff.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Tracy. Okay, so we get these errors, which is great. We know that we have to fix these, which is also great. And the fun thing here is that this is telling us exactly the next type of thing that I was going to do, which is when we have to annotate things. So TypeScript, for the most part, can usually infer things, meaning just, it knows the type of something based on how you're using it. It knows the type of my string is going to be a string because I've defined it. It's a string there. And so it knows that push doesn't exist on it. But the other thing that I can do in TypeScript is I can say, this should be a string, right? And so in that, I can say that my string is type string. And so when I do the stuff with it, it's going to have string methods available on it. There are things in Vue that are going to require you to do this type of annotation. And importantly, this type of annotation can get at least a little bit annoying sometimes. And that's something that the setup, the composition API that we'll hopefully get to here a little bit, is very good at, is that the composition API is, it's pretty much just functions. And so you usually don't have to do this type of annotating in the setup API. What I'm going to do here is what, so I've removed the push thing. I'm no longer attempting to do that. I'm a good developer. I know that that is a string, and so I can't do push. But I'm still getting these messages. It's a little bit of a Viter bug that these don't show up somewhere in the component, but that's okay because they show up when I'm trying to compile, and they're super helpful. You'll notice all caps message implicitly has return type any, because it does not have a return type annotation and is referenced directly or indirectly in one of its return expressions. This is a little bit wordy, but this also happens to be, remember our friend Anders? This was related to what was going on there, that if we annotate this type now, we should be able to get more information right now. This says any. So this is a case where we're going to have to annotate it because computed properties, they're pretty complicated the way that they work. Sometimes you have to add the annotations. So all caps message, we know it's taking in message. We know this is going to be a string. This should, all caps message, when you return a value from it, it should be treated as a string. Did this work? Well, let's go find out. We'll hover it. Oh, looks like no at the moment. Well, let's annotate the next one. So all caps message with prefix. This too is also going to be a string. Let's go ahead and annotate it. Oh, still any. Okay. And all caps message with prefix. Perfect. So I went ahead and I annotated these two, and let's take a look. Okay. So another case where in an ideal world, I would love for this to be surfaced in the IDE, but it also might be related to my extensions, the versions of my extensions. These are constantly kind of being improved. And it's great that I am getting exactly the message that I'm interested in, which is that message, not working in the hover at the moment, but message is possibly undefined. And so that's, so it's yelling at me because this is exactly the type of error that we'd love to surface. It's yelling at me because what happens if I put this into the browser and I do this.message.to uppercase, but no one has passed in a message prop? You can post it in the chat or say it out loud. Nice, Colin, great call. And to Ben, I think I only have. No, I think I've disabled it and I had the beta for a little bit. I'll come back to that. Yes, Colin, great answer. We can mark it as required to true, or since it's defaulting to not required right now, the other thing that we can do is my favorite thing, which is optional chaining. So this just says, if there's a message, do it to uppercase, and otherwise, if you're not able to, if there's nothing there, let's return an empty string. And
question.
Yes, please, Tracy.
Sorry, optional chaining. You have to have a polyfill, because it doesn't work in. So I use it in the email app because I'm on a version of Node where I don't need a polyfill or anything like that.
Love that.
So you use Babel or because IE 11, right?
Yeah, great question. Yes, so we use this all the time. So you can definitely make it work in IE 11. Babel is a solid way to do it. And with question marks, because I cannot remember the details, TypeScript itself, I believe, can target a lower version of JavaScript and do that compilation for you. And I'm putting all that kind of bracketed. I don't remember the details right now. I believe what's happening. Yeah, I believe what's happening right now is that Babel would be doing the polyfilling because we have Babel installed. But you're totally right, Tracy. This awesome syntax will work in Firefox, I believe, and Chrome for sure.
Because I have we haven't, our biggest app, I cannot wait because the code that goes on forever. If you get kind of nested into, you're targeting something that's sort of nested in the object, it's kind of ugly.
100%, totally agree. Yeah, most modern browsers have this ready now. It's a pretty recent JavaScript feature. This was another great aspect of TypeScript. The TypeScript team pushed this forward. It wouldn't have happened without them. And because it was like their first issue, people were always complaining about, why can't I do this? And so instead of implementing something that only worked in TypeScript, they instead worked with TC39, I think is the group. They worked with the people who run the JavaScript standards to make this actually become part of JavaScript.
I didn't realize that. That is really nice. So it's really only IE 11 that's the issue.
Yes. TC39 optional chaining. Let's go find Daniel, who is the program manager at the TypeScript team. Here he is. Yeah, so he took over as an issue owner here to kind of push it through to the end. It was awesome. It was great.
Oh, wow. Because I'm so sick of those null messages. I'm like null of whatever,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
No problem. So
that's a bonus for TypeScript right there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a thing that just benefited the JavaScript community as a whole because someone needed to sort of push it through. There were a lot of you can get lost in this stuff. It's super interesting. There were a lot of syntax questions. People were disagreeing about syntax, and someone just needed to say hey, everyone wants this. Can we make a decision? Which is awesome. Okay, so I'm going to, I think, pause for a moment because I've had enough cases here where I'd like a little more IDE help. And I thought I was going to do this a lot earlier, but I am going to pass the buck to Ben and ask Ben, what should my VS Code environment look like right now in order to have the best TypeScript experience in terms of extensions?
Yeah, so this is let me hang on. Let me turn on video. All right. So in terms of the best DX experience for TypeScript at the moment, we're probably looking at, so I would actually recommend installing Vue.js, which is maintained by Raffle, who's on the core team. And so in case you're wondering, so it is a bit interesting right now because Vue.js is kind of like a vtur, but specifically for TypeScript. So you'll need to they need to update this, but you need to refresh your entire VS Code instance.
Yeah, I'm totally happy with that. Should I disable vtur or should I leave it for now?
That was my question. Yep.
I think you can actually leave it alone. In the past, it was required, but I think we can go ahead and we do need to reboot VS Code though.
Is reload window usually sufficient?
That should be more than adequate. Yeah, that should be fine.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, fingers crossed.
Let's find out what I get for hovering.
Worse.
Leave me alone, Atlassian. Oh, it's all loading. It's all happening. Hey, love to see that.
There we go.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, and so it does some of those things that you were mentioning that like if you did do component something, I'm assuming it's all configured. Vue.js helps to improve some of our experience as far as like importing components or like automatically abstracting certain codes into partials. Like there'll be something more content on this coming out in the future, but Vue.js is definitely an extension to watch out for since it's going to really help to improve our experience on Vue 3 going forward.
Awesome.
And are there thoughts in terms of both of these coexisting, Viter and Vue.js or anything like that?
I think it will continue existing separately. They're basically, I mean, since the Viter is like a core maintained plugin, so there is a desire for them to play together well. Perhaps at some point they'll be merged together. But at this point, they are maintained as separate things, and at least doesn't seem to conflict at the moment. I remember earlier on there were some problems, but I don't think it is at this time.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Very much appreciate it. Something I want to try right now. Hey, that's exactly what I wanted to happen. There you go. So now our error messages that we're seeing. Look at this. Okay. So we are getting messages for both. So they're not conflicting with one another. They are just both running.
That's super cool. Like, this was definitely not working when I first had tried it. That's really neat.
Cool. So here we go. Ready? So it's yelling at us. Oops. Let's get yelled at here. Object is possibly undefined. Hey-oh, there we are. Perfect. Colin made the great point that we can either make the message prop required, or we can set a default. And both of those, I think setting a default will be sufficient. What I want to do next, though, is show a little bit more about one other thing that we run into a lot with TypeScript components, which is how do you annotate props. So I'm going to do that. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is try to show a little bit of the composition API and try to not make a fool of myself. And so that's kind of the next 10 minutes or so here. 15, I suppose. So,
well, I had a question about data. So like if you go to our data, before you go to the composition API, can you go to the component where you actually have the data, or show us how you would do data with TypeScript? I'm just curious of what the difference would be.
Yeah. The great news is it's almost exactly the same, and TypeScript does a great job in this case of inferring types of things. So let's set some data on this property. Let's do, go ahead.
No, I have a specific reason I'm asking. I came up with this weird thing. And okay, so when I create my data, if it's empty, I create an empty array because I want to be explicit. This is what it is. It's an empty array. It's empty string, whatever. I don't like null because I want to know. But I'm thinking this is where TypeScript could help, because what happened is, so I don't know if you all use Apollo client, but there's this Apollo client is like the interface between, the Vue app, your Vue app, and GraphQL, your API. And there's this option, like if it's like you're not your main query. So let's say, because I work on news, you have an article, and so you have other things you're querying, but you maybe need something from the article, so you'll skip it. So maybe you need like an article ID, or you need some kind of ID which in the article object. And so if it's not there, then you skip this query. Well, because it just wouldn't accept an empty array. It just like I gave up and had to make it null, which I don't like to do. So that's why I was thinking TypeScript is a way to, my way of like to be explicit. This is an array that's going to come to us, and not say null, because if it's null, then the developer has no way of knowing unless they go look at the GraphQL docs or, something like that. So I don't know if that made sense or not.
Yeah, I think so, which is that in general, TypeScript will help you define the expected shape of things. And that includes telling you when something might be null, and confirming when something is not null, and confirming the shape of things like, initializing data like this. So I've created some data here, account and Tracy's array. And I want to use it in a new computed property, which is oops, I don't want to call it computed. I want to call it join array. I don't know. And let's initialize this with hi there. All right, so joined array is going to return, joined array is going to, return Tracy's array, and it's going to join it. So return, return this dot. Now, a wonderful thing that we get from having TypeScript is we know that this is something that was from the data object, but is going to be returned here. And when I hover it, I think, oh, not quite. Okay. Please pause. Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry, duh. I'm an idiot. I'm trying to do joined array. I meant to do Tracy's array. Ignore me. And ignore this for now. I meant to grab Tracy's array. And Tracy's array dot, we can now see that Tracy's array is known to be an array, which is huge. So I can't do like to uppercase, right? Because that's not going to exist. But what I can do is Tracy's array dot join, and it's going to tell me that, hey, this data that you're initializing is going to be of a it's going to be of an array type. And I'm seeing these red errors, right? I'm getting yelled at. And I happen to know that this is another case where computed properties, it's tough to know for TypeScript without us annotating. It's tough to know exactly what that's going to be. So you may have to annotate it sometime. But now we're in a great spot. We know Tracy's array, it's an array of strings. We know joined array is going to return a string. And importantly, if I thought that joined array was going to return a number, I would get very yelled at because it's telling me that type string is not assignable to type number. So Tracy, does that begin to answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, it does some.
Okay.
So what if you did, okay, so is there a way to say that, like, say, this is just specifically dealing with my Apollo problem.
Sure.
Is there a way to say Tracy's array is null? Because say that information is actually may come from somewhere else.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Okay, but can you say null, but then also define, like, if you get data, it's going to be an object. If you get data, it's going to be an array.
Yep. Absolutely, you can.
That's okay. So that I really like.
Yeah, but the ability to do that is a little bit tricky. So I think I can do it here. Yeah, cool. So I can annotate it inline, which is a way to tell TypeScript, and you'll see this in places. So it's a way to tell TypeScript, look, I'm initializing this as null, so you have no idea what it's supposed to be, right? You don't have a clue of what it's going to be. But I'll tell you what it's going to be. It's either going to be null or it's going to be an array of strings. It's going to be one of those two things. I really like
that, because then with the Apollo, I can make it null, but then every developer knows that because this is coming from somewhere else, right? It's data. It's coming from somewhere else. It's going to be an array. It's going to be an object, whatever. I like that.
Yeah. And you get appropriately yelled at here, right? It's possibly null. And so once I do that and give it an alternate thing to return, then we're good.
I could see some reasons for us to try to go over to TypeScript.
I am ecstatic that is a potential takeaway. Oh, great question, Brian. An array of objects, what would that look like? Well, this is an array of strings. And I'll just show it. I think it's more clear if I show what a TypeScript interface would look like here. So Brian's object, an interface in TypeScript is just saying this is going to be the shape of data for some things, and it's going to be useful for me. So Brian's object is going to always have a name, which is always going to be a string, and it's creating a type, Brian. Absolutely. This is creating a type or an interface. And let's say it also has a value, which is also a string. So that's what Brian's object is always going to look like. And now I can say that Tracy's array can always be, like, it's going to start as null, but if it ever gets data, it's always going to have the shape of an array of Brian's objects. These are fun. I'm enjoying this a lot. And so Tracy's array is always going to look like this. What if we wanted to make use of that and said Tracy's array, before we join it, let's map it. And let's say that obj, instead of it being an object, let's just always show the name, right? So we want to so I want to display the name of the object, but I forgot what the shape of it looks like. But okay, here we go, object dot, and then boom, very exciting. So we see what the properties available are because we've annotated it this way. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. I'm gonna use name, perfect. I'm gonna map it. Now I'm gonna join it. I'm gonna join them with commas, and then the last thing is like, can't return undefined. So if we don't have values here, let's just return an empty string. Now we're good. We're no longer yelled at. So that is defining object types or the shape of object types. Whew. Good stuff. Okay, I don't want to have to totally skip setup or the composition API. I want to at least attempt that and show how that solves these problems, solves some of these things, right? Like we're constantly doing these annotating as strings. I want to show that a little bit. And I also don't want to take up too much time. I'd like to stop in the next 5 or 10 minutes. Does that sound good to everyone as a goal? I'm gonna go.
I'd say 15 minutes is okay.
All right, we'll see what we can do. Okay,
keep it a bit longer because this is going to be interesting. So
maybe, who knows?
Oh no, I think it will.
Okay, so at this point, our computed properties, they're done here. We've had to annotate them because Vue is a little, it's doing a lot of, in order for these computed properties to work, it's doing a lot of thinking basically at compiling time to know what the type of each computed property is. So right now we have to add these annotations in order for this to work. Let's see an example of it yelling at us again. No annotations. It's like all of a sudden, I don't know what's going on. Implicitly as return type any. So that's why we're doing that. We can do these computed properties in a composition API approach instead. Whew. Moment of truth here. Does Jack know what he's doing? We have, thanks to Vue 3, a new thing in the options for a component called setup. Setup is the composition API, and it is a function that runs. Oh man, Ben, you're giving a full presentation on this. Can you just like give a 2-minute spiel of what setup is?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, you should think of setup as a lifecycle hook. It's probably the easiest way to think of it. And it occurs basically before everything is initialized. So this is the tricky part, though. If you want to invoke computed properties, I think it's going to happen before data exists, though, Jack. So we'd have to migrate all of data and compute it, I think, if you want to make this work.
Sounds good. I am only planning on doing one of these.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's all I think all people need to know is that setup is like this thing that you kick off before a computer runs, because these are the things where you might want to like aptly name setup, because you might want to import some things before the component starts up and kick it off. And then the options gets basically set up after that. So that's the easiest way of thinking about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. I have added a couple imports here for things that I'm going to use from Vue. So Vue 3 does this great thing where a lot of its functionality is done in ES modules. Whoa, Colin, you're in Sydney? That's awesome. That's super cool. How's the weather in Sydney right now? And as a follow-up question, Stormy, can you, if you wanted, currently go to a sporting event and hang out with people without masks? Moment of truth. And then my follow-up question is, can I move to Australia? Anyway, thank you for joining us. Oh, sorry, I was wondering, Colin, if you if in-person events are going strong right now for you, for things without masks and like concerts, and basically we've seen a lot of images here of people.
He really wants to know if you can live, basically.
Yeah, like,
you're not stuck in your house.
I'll wait for. Oh, yes, we can go to.
No way! Seriously?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't think there's a Politico Australia yet.
There's not? Okay. Well, we'll have to find out. If they have that set up. I'm sure Hangsu is very close to getting it set up.
Okay. Are you volunteering, Jack?
I happen to know for a fact that we're not allowed to move right there or there right now because we are infected garbage. Okay. Nice. Thanks, Colin. Okay, so I am going to say Tracy's array equals ref. Boy. Okay, I'm going to immediately cheat and go back to how do I do Vue 3. And let's see some options here. Okay, so we're looking at an example here. Here's an example setup. And ref is a way to say, I want this value to be reactive. And so I'm basically going to do something like this, which is they have year equals ref of 2020. I want Tracy's array equals ref of, and let's go ahead and match our, I guess, Tracy, ignore that I'm initializing data here for now, because I want to see, I want to see what it infers, but we can come back to initializing with a null thing. Okay, so I now have Tracy's array, and it is a ref. And what that means here is that Tracy's array is a reactive thing, but when I do later in my setup function, and we're just in like a JavaScript function here, so I can do whatever I want with Tracy's array. When I do this, you'll notice that Tracy's array is not a pure array of strings right now. It is instead a ref, where the type of ref it is a string. What that means is it's reactive. And if I want the value of Tracy's array, I have to do Tracy's array.value. But then I can see that it is an array, and I get all the array methods. And so this is an extremely TypeScript here. So if you're using setup, I'd say you're very likely using TypeScript in your project. If you're using the composition API, that's probably not 100% true. But TypeScript, they work well together here because if you lose track of like, what is a ref? And do I have to use .value and things like that? TypeScript's going to help you out because it knows that, yep, this is a ref, has .value. And now once you're in the value of the thing, you can do whatever you want. You can map it or whatever. Next up, what we want to do is we want to have a computed property that references Tracy's array. Let me go ahead and I'm going to at least comment out Tracy's array here. So we want to have a computed property about Tracy's array. And I'm going to go ahead and fall back here to seeing computed here. I want to see how this is done in the setup. Perfect. So the example that they give, that Ben and his friends over here in the Vue docs give, is they give an example of double counting. Double counting uses this computed helper imported from Vue, whose job it is to make a computed property for you, which is what are computed properties in Vue. They are things that are reactive, and they will give you a reactive value computing other reactive values. It's simpler to just show what this looks like. So const joined array joined array equals computed, which like I mentioned, I imported ref and computed from Vue. Computed is a method, right? It's a method like these computed props are. And now I just have to return what I want the computed property to be. So it's going to be something like this. Let's, this is going to get a little long. So why don't I go ahead and do this, return. Now, why is this yelling at me? All of a sudden, I can't do this immediately. If anyone wants to take a guess in the chat or say out loud what's going on here before I hover it, you're welcome to. But I'm about to hover it, which is something that TypeScript helps us with. Why is it yelling at me? Well, it's because Tracy's array is not an array. Tracy's array is a ref, right? And so map doesn't exist on type ref. So, yep, right? Okay. Thank you, TypeScript. I'm going to do .value .map. Cool.
Well, object, the name, yeah.
Yeah. Let's so let's replicate what we were doing. We were using Brian's object, right? Let's, instead of initializing with strings, let's go ahead and initialize with some Brian's object. But the other thing I'm going to do to make this easy on us, I'm guessing here, I think this is how it's done, but it might not be. I might be right.
Wait, remind me, interface is the TypeScript thing. It's not a Vue 3 thing?
Yes.
Interface. Okay, because it also reminds me of Java. So when I see that, I had bad experiences with Java. So okay.
No, 100%. Yep.
Oh yeah, you had the same bad experiences I have, I bet.
Yeah. So I think let me start typing here and seeing if I'm doing. Yes. All right. Cool. So this is more of it's a slightly more advanced TypeScript thing. But it's called a generic. It's a way to pass to tell a method which specific return type you're interested in. In this case, this is the equivalent, I would say. This version of setting up traces array is kind of the equivalent of what we're doing here. In this case, and I will 100% be committing this code, and I'll be pushing it up, and you'll know that it's very far from the best code, but it's something to take a look at it. So you're welcome to take a look at it. These things are roughly equivalent. Traces array is being typed as Brian's object here, right? This is a way to type the ref here and say that, hey, we're going to have an array, and now TypeScript is telling us, oh, you're expecting Brian's objects here. Perfect. You should have a name. Cool. Brian. And yell at me again, right? Property value is missing. Perfect. So let's go ahead and give it a value, and let's just Brian lowercase. Perfect. No longer getting yelled at. So this is another case of TypeScript being able to infer a lot of things. So if I just do ref and I just do it like this, TypeScript inferred. Hello. TypeScript inferred that traces array is going to be a ref of type string. If I did it as something like this, it's actually getting that pretty accurately. I can kind of just have that work, right? It knows that the things in here are expected to be name value. Or if I take this approach and tell TypeScript explicitly, like, hey, you're interested in Brian's objects here. Now when I hover over it, it's going to be ref. It's going to know that they should have name and value. And when I hover over this, it knows name and value. Yeah, that's just a little bit about how to annotate things. Yeah.
So I have questions when you're ready.
Yeah, let me finish this up real quick.
Sure.
I'm going to return a thing. So let's just even go with this one, Brian value. And I'm returning something. Now, what is joined array? Joined array, awesome. This is the thing that was missing. Is that joined array it knows that it is a computed ref, and it knows that it is type string. So previously, we had to do this annotating, right? Here, because we're doing this in the setup method, it knows what compute it is returning. It can parse what's going on in here. It knows the expected types of what's going on in here, and it knows then that joined array is type string. And I think our last step here, I hope I'm doing the right thing here. I think our last step is to return these in the setup method. So I'm going to return traces array, and I'm going to return joined array. And now the thing I don't know, let's just find out. Test, lazy in my naming things. Yes, okay, perfect. So something that you make available in the setup method if you want to use the composition API with other aspects of Vue, with other aspects of the options API. As the Vue team likes to say, it's an additive thing. So you can use setup, you can return now your refs. These are appropriately typed showing that joined array is going to be string, Tracy's array, it's parsing as name value, or we can, use explicitly Brian's object. We can use that interface. But later in our component, we can do this dot joined array, and it's going to know that is an array, and it's going to know that it's going to know the properties of the things in that array as well, I believe.
Why is it angry, to use your words?
Great question. Oh, because it was string. Duh.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Yeah, because joined array was a string. Sorry, if I did Tracy's array, which is an object, then now Tracy's array is not the string one. So.
Wow. Okay. This is kind of nice, actually.
Yeah. Hit me with some questions, because I think, done talking, even though something I would have liked to do a little more of is show like people list, the way that works. And people list actually doesn't have all that much of our logic. So what we would probably do is go over here and see home. Ooh, this is exciting. Look at all the stuff that it's yelling at us about. That's very exciting.
Oh, wow. That is exciting.
So we would work through what it would take to make that work. That would be part 2 of this, I guess. But in the meantime, Tracy, what questions can I answer?
Okay, so this may seem kind of icky thing to do, but Please. Can you actually, so we have some stuff that I definitely see the composition API, for user information, and I just see there's places where the composition API would make sense for us.
Sure.
And I see why you would want to use TypeScript in it. So is it really, really bad form to mix TypeScript and the composition API with JavaScript and the rest of it? I'm just trying to think about, is it something you really need to change the entire component? I'm just trying to map out how we do this.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass it to Ben, but I'm first gonna say I just don't think it's worth it. I think the benefits of the composition API are, in my humble opinion, pretty closely linked to being able to type things. And so I think, if you're just doing JavaScript, you might also be able to get away with mixins, for example,
Well, we don't want mixins. That's part of the thing.
Yeah. So I'm going to pass it to Ben. I think the other aspect, you know what? Actually, sorry. Before I pass it to Ben, I keep teasing him. I am curious what happens if I just remove this.
I mean, I know it sounds yucky. I just want to know.
But it's not that bad. And comment this out again. And I'm going to hover this. Okay. Before I wait.
Oh yeah, but Brian's objects gets
That's
mad.
okay, because that's fine. That was that's a TypeScript specific thing. This is a TypeScript specific thing. This is a TypeScript specific thing. I'll undo all this in just a minute. I want to be very careful.
I'm just curious if I'm just trying to think of your strategy to try to turn something over to TypeScript.
Yeah. So
I mean, we have it's a big code base, so it's
yeah. In general, I think you would probably be trying to convert that particular component to TypeScript at the time that you're adding the setup API. However, or the setup composition API. However, the great news about the way these are typed is that this appears to roughly be working. In that ref, even though this is a JavaScript component, VS Code is able to understand these are the type definitions for ref, and I can see that Tracy's array is a ref of this. I can see that joined array is a computed ref of string. And so I you'd still get some benefit out of it. The main thing is you're not going to get yelled at here, even though you should. And you're not going to get yelled at when you're compiling. So even if you get some, you will, the big thing here, so you're still in a JavaScript component, watch that, you still get that benefit. So that's great. You just won't get yelled at if you type that. And you won't have the failure on you won't have the failure on build. I mean, so you still get some benefit.
Right. For us, the component would be more of a composition. I can see us having just composition API, almost just composition API components.
Sure.
And okay. I'm just trying to think about because it's a big project to switch it over.
Yeah. No, it's important that this is possible to do gradually.
Okay. So Ben probably wants to tell me it's a bad idea and it's yucky.
No, please, Ben. If you're
No, not at all. I think Jack's answer was quite well suited. I mean, again, a lot of what Vue is that you can do things progressively. And so, yes, I would say like maybe you don't, if it's a large code base, you don't want to convert all your JS files to TS automatically, for example. But I say once you add the plugin in, like to what we saw today, you can just opt in when it makes sense.
Right.
And then as long as you're not doing that, then it won't yell at you. And so I'm a big fan of call it progressive TypeScript rather than feeling like you need to sort of opt in all at once. And so, yeah, this is one of those things where, I mean, do what's best for the team and what you don't want to obviously like impede progress and new features. But at least with Vue 3, it'll become much easier to progressively do it as opposed to Vue 2, which was a lot more painful.
So I guess we should, does anybody else have questions for Jack?
Yeah, definitely.
Feel free to unmute your mic, or you can send it in the chat. Either way. Nope, no question.
Which is no problem. In the interim, either any additional questions from Tracy, or I'd love to give Ben a little bit of space here right at the end to highlight anything. Yeah, very reasonable, Brian. Ben, to highlight anything that you'd like to amend, clarify, highlight from what we've talked about for this.
No, you've done a wonderful job covering like the various aspects and like how it really helps so the VS Code benefit and those sort of things. So absolutely, yeah, you did a fantastic job today. So nothing to add from my end.
Awesome. Really, I was just looking for validation there, so I'm glad we.
I think I'm actually going to tell them I think we should go to TypeScript. So, oh my god.
Yeah.
I was so against TypeScript in the front end, but I kind of see the value now. So.
Yeah, just sprinkle it in. That's the key, right? The key is not to like do everything. It's just on the parts that make the most sense, and over time.
Because we have so many APIs that are TypeScript, like it's, they're already writing in TypeScript, and we're in this big push where like I tend to do a lot of front end because I really like the front end, but they're like, no, you got to work in the back end. But the torture is the back end people. Well, it's that API level, not the Java back end, but the API layer. But their torture is they have to go work in the front end. I think they're more upset about it than I am. But anyway, but I can see the value if we're going to do that. It's just easier if it's all TypeScript. It's easier on everyone's brain, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I would generally agree with that. I'm just finishing up some changes here so that I can push this while I'm thinking about it. And I'm going to go ahead.
Yeah, and I definitely like that interface. This is like doing all the things because I do a lot of things that are maybe, like I realize now that I'm making up for a lot of things that TypeScript's doing that I'm actually doing manually.
Sure, yeah.
Yep.
Stop it, Atlassian, I promise I'll log in. Any last questions while I'm sharing? I'm going to stop sharing shortly. This looks promising. I think we're all good here. Oh, one more thing while I'm sharing. I'm going to see what happens when we serve this. The app is going to be totally broken because it's just serving this hello world thing. But that is, I will say that's like one more really nice highlight. I've been doing all this development without looking at the browser at all. Granted, I'm not doing much development because I haven't displayed many of these things, but let's go ahead and display at least one of them. I wonder if Vue.js. Yes, Vue.js, you're the best. It's helping me. It's helping me see things in the. It's helping me see things in the. In the template. So even though we're in the template, we can see that this is a string, which is wild. And I can also do Tracy's array dot join in a different way if I want. And let's join that based on a hyphen or something like that. Let's do that. Perfect. Love that. So yeah, some super cool stuff. Let's see if it's going to show us object. Yes, because I haven't mapped it. I'm just going to remove that for now. Let's do the all caps message prefix. Love that. Love that. So great. Very cool. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and push this. We won't merge it because it looks super broken, but I'll highlight the branch for people. And that is all I have. Thank you so much for your patience. And for those of us still with us, let's do round 2 of trivia, Tracy.
Yeah, round 2 of trivia. I 11 hell.
Yeah, very relevant.
Nice.
Very relevant.
Bill for 2. Okay, and the number 1 is Percy also.
What a day
Nice
for
job.
Jack, Ben. What a day.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Nice.
Woo-hoo.
All right.
All right.
Well, thanks again to Jack for a wonderful live demo. Learned a lot. I hope you all did too.
Yeah, great job, Jack.
Thank you very much. I am grabbing a link real quick just while people are here, which is to the branch, if that's useful to anyone. So one moment.
And I'll try to update our pages, our website and stuff. I've been like, all the days run together. I just.
So if you're interested, that's what we've added. And here is our not terribly useful but technically TypeScriptified hello
Nice.
world filed.
Nice.
All right, I'm all good. Thanks, Tracy.
All right. With that, I guess we'll call it an evening. So thanks again, everyone, for coming, and we'll see you next month.